afternoon, my name is Jennifer Timms. I am about to show you a painting that I'm going to paint. It's going to be this one. I am painting it for my mother-in-law. Now, my husband has already did the pre-drawing of it. So I'm going to tell you step by step what I'm going to do. I've got my water for soaking the brushes. I got my brushes. My palette, and I'm going to put on my painting apron. I am doing this painting for my mother-in-law because she likes cats and dragons. So I figured this would be a perfect gift for her to give her. And I will tell you what colors I'm using and everything. Okay, the first color I will be using is Mars Black. It is an Artist Loft paint. I will use this to outline the pencil drawing. I'm going to put that up here in case I need some more of it. Now the first paintbrush is one with a thin tip so I can match the lines just right. I'm going to dunk the brush in the water to wet the tip and dip it into the black paint. Not a whole lot on there. The first thing I'm going to do is the back scales of the dragon. And I'm going to paint all the line, paint them over with the black paint. I'm getting to the nose area. Dunking the paintbrush again. Tracing the outline of the back scales again. Now I couldn't tell you exactly what brush I'm using because I'm not that savvy on them. So I'm just gonna show you them as I go. And you want to always make sure that you get the outside, the edges of the painting of the canvas. This is on an 8x10 stretch canvas. See, this is what I'm talking about right here. You always want to make sure you get these because it makes the picture look more fluid. That's the start of it. Now I'm going to do the lines inside. And I'm also getting the side of the dragon's face. Now, as you can see, that part's done. Now I'm going to do the rest. Okay, since I've already started on the face, I'm going to finish it. But I want to make sure I get every little line. Otherwise, if I don't, it shows through. And this is just how I do paintings. Everybody does paintings differently. Some do the background first and then paint over it. And most of the time I do. But since this is a special one, I want to make sure I get every line just right. So that's why I have it drawn on first. The only reason I do it in the layered effect is if I'm just doing something freehand and not copying a pattern. And I just recently started doing the layering. For a while I was afraid to do the layering because I was afraid I wouldn't get everything right. But I've been doing art since I was early 20s. I started out just doing watercolors and watercolor pencils. And as I got older, I started experimenting with others, like this is acrylic paint. I do various different mediums. I do coloring in coloring books with colored pencils. I also use pastels. I'm still fairly new at the pastels, so I don't mess with them very often. And I've also started experimenting with oil. Again, that's something I'm fairly new at. Right now, my favorite mediums are with acrylic paint, watercolor paints, and colored pencils. I don't color anything without colored pencils. I don't use crayons unless it's required because crayons break too easily. So I try not to use crayons unless I absolutely have to. Now if I'm coloring in a basic color book other than my adult coloring books, I'll use crayons. But I haven't done that in a while. I mainly use the colored pencils in the adult coloring books, which I have a various amount of. I'll show you in a minute a little bit more of what I've gotten done with the face. The nostrils on this dragon are the hardest to do because there's so many tiny lines. You don't want to overlap the paint. There's what I've done so far. Next area I'm going to cover is this area up here. I'm going to finish around the face. And then I'm going to work my way up to the horns. Now what I do when I'm done with the painting is I usually go back over and do the fine lines with the black to make sure they stick out and they don't get lost in the painting. Because sometimes when you use different colors of paint, the line in the shape tends to get lost in it, and you can't tell what's what. Now I have been doing work in the studio since October of 2019. Then that's my first time working in a studio. It's a collaborative studio. So going to a collaborative studio, I see many people's different artwork. And I'm very impressed with how well they do. A lot of the artists have been there a lot longer than me, so it doesn't surprise me that they're better. But my goal in the end is trying to be the best painter I can and possibly get my work noticed in galleries. But before that can happen, I have to have enough experience painting and make sure my paintings turn out nicely. So it's a work in progress. And another reason I picked this painting is because I thought it was really cute. You don't see a cat and a dragon in the same picture very often. As you notice, I'm constantly dipping my brush in the water make sure that the excess paint rinses off. If you look, the water's turning a black color because I'm using the black. Now I'm working on the horns of the dragon. This is what it looks like so far. When I'm done with everything else, I will start working on the cat paws and the cat. Now another reason this painting is really good is because it's a cat on top of a dragon. It's put together really well. The colors mesh really well. Mine won't be exactly the same as the drawing, but I'm hoping it'll be close. Now again, I'm working on the horns of the dragon. And you want to make sure you pay attention to the tiny details, because that's going to make a difference if the picture looks good or not. And you often want to kind of tap when you soak it in the water, you kind of want to tap on the edge of your container to make sure there's no dripping water, because that could ruin the paint. It could make it too runny, and you don't want that. You don't want the paint too runny. You want it fairly thick. Now there's a difference between this and watercolors. Watercolors you want to look runny. That's what brings out the beauty of it. Whereas acrylics, you don't want it to look runny. And sometimes you have to continuously dunk your paintbrush in the paint, because eventually the paint wears off of the brush and it doesn't look solid. Okay, as you can see, the dragon is done. I'm getting ready to do the cat now. And when you paint, you always gotta expect to get paint on you. It just happens that way. And when you do your painting, you want to make sure you got proper clothes for the painting, because you will get paint on your clothes. No matter how hard you try not to, you will. Because when it's on your arms, it rubs off. If you don't notice it, it rubs off onto the clothes. And if you don't have specific clothes you use for painting, make sure you have a painting apron like what I do. Now, it's actually, this is what they call it's a gourmet cook kitchen apron. I got it at Walmart for $7. They work very nicely for a painting apron. I'm almost done highlighting the cat. Now I've got to get a smaller brush because there's a bunch of tiny, fine details that I can't do with this paint brush. So that's where I go with this one. See the difference? This one versus this one. This one's a little bit thicker. This one is a little bit thinner. So I dunk it in the water, tap it on the jar, and I start working on the fine details of the cat. I'm going to do the cat's ears. Now, it doesn't need to be perfect. The way I call it, I said the imperfection is what makes it perfect. I always tell that to everybody. The imperfection is what makes it perfect. Because then it shows that you're human. And everybody strives to be perfect, but they don't always succeed. But with paintings, like I said, the imperfections make it unique. That's what I think anyways. Now I'm putting the hair in the cat's ear. And then we got the whiskers here on the side. And now I'm working on the nose of the cat. And now the mouth. Now this cat is like a happy cat. It's smiling. You can tell it's enjoying being around its friend. Okay, now the outlining part is done. See? Now I'm going to start using the coloring part. And the first color I'm going to use, I gotta find it. Okay, this is Hooker's Cream. Liquitex Basics. It's a small tube. Again, you can get this at Michael's. You can get it in a set of 8 for like $10. And I'm also going to pull out a yellow color for the tip of the dragon's nose. It's more of a yellow orange, so let me see what I can find. Okay, the other color I'm going to use is yellow ochre. It's another Artist Loft paint. It also comes in a small tube. You can get it at multiple packs at Michael's. Now at this point you want to go and dump the water so you can get fresh water. I will be right back. Okay, I'm back. As you can see, I got a clean jar of water, so the black water doesn't mix in with the lighter color paints, because if it does, it doesn't look very nice. So, okay, so the next thing I'm going to work on is its tip of its nose, which is right here. This and this. This and this. And then the eye is also yellow. I'm going to work on that as well. So in my palette, I put a little yellow in it. And I'm going to have to get a different brush. This one is too small for the details I need. This is where I get a small round brush. And you can get paintbrushes at various different places. You can get them at Walmart. You can get them at Michael's. You can get them at Hobby Lobby. I get my paintbrushes between Michael's and Walmart, because they usually have fairly decent deals on paintbrushes. You can get a multi-pack of different sizes for a good price. Now this painting palette, the plastic painting palette that I'm putting my paints in, I got it at Walmart for $3.92. You can find it in the art and craft aisle, the painting aisle, where you get the books and the paints. Now I'm painting the nose of the dragon. I use both the long-handled brushes and brushes like these. I just prefer the long-handled brushes because it gives me distance from the canvas. Now I'm painting the scales on the dragon's stomach. And you want to try and cover as much of the white area as possible. It doesn't always work that way, but that depends on the type of brush you use. But the type of brush I'm using, the small round brush, it makes it hard to get it exactly in that area So I have to go over the area a couple of times to try and cover it without covering the black lines. And another reason the painting apron comes in handy is you can, if you need to rinse your brush off and you forget, you can wipe it on the apron and you don't have to worry about it getting on your clothes. I do that a lot. Because sometimes it's just easier to wipe it on what you're wearing. It depends on how in the zone you are painting. Now I keep dipping the paintbrush in the water. I want to make sure that the excess water is taken off. I'm still working on the scales of the belly. Now if you can't find the exact color that is on the picture, you can always do an estimate of the color with making do with what colors you have. And that's pretty much what I'm doing. I'm looking at the colors of the dragon and the cat, and I guess you would be saying I'm winging it. I noticed I missed something on the bottom of the canvas. See, I missed that bottom part. So I'm going to cover it with the black paint. There we go. Now I'm going to continue with the yellow ochre. Now if you look, I continued the painting on the bottom of the canvas, and if you look here on the side, same thing, and on the top. It's recommended because it makes it look more fluid. Now I'm going to work on the dragon's eye. It's the yellow color as well. It's going to be yellow ochre I'm using. And you also want to make sure that the color is, the previous color is kind of dry, because if you paint a fresh color over the paint that's not dry, it smears the picture. Now I'm going to use the Mars Black to paint the pupil of the dragon. Now I'm double checking the picture, seeing if there's any more yellow that I need. And it does not look like it. See, I used the yellow on the bottom. Here's the picture again. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the dragon's face with the hooker green, which is this hooker green. Now it looks like there's side that there's some blue too. So the next color I'm going to get out is my aquamarine color. Or bright aqua green. That's a Liquitex basic acrylics, and it's called bright aqua green. This I will use to paint around the eye and a couple of other areas. Again, I will put it with the other paint in case I need to use it more than once. And then there's a blue. And the color I'm going to use for that is fluorescent blue. Again, liquid basic acrylics. That will go with the rest of the colors over here. And the reason like I said, the reason I'm putting the paint off to the side is in case I run out of them in the palette and I need to use them again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the nostrils of the dragon. You got to be careful because of the intricate details. You know what? I'm going to switch to the thin tip paintbrush. This is too big. So I'm going to switch to this one. Okay. I'm still painting the nostril with the hooker green. And in the small areas, you just want to barely touch. Like tip, use the tip of the brush to put in the tiny areas. Okay. Then the inside of the nostrils, I'm going to paint Mars black. This color. You see, the nostrils are done. You can see the green and you can see the black. Now I'm going to continue painting on the nose. Or the snout, or whatever you want to call it. And if you make a mistake, what you want to do is go with the flow. You can't change it with the acrylics unless you use gesso. And gesso is used to completely wipe the canvas clean. And you don't want to do that because then you'd have to do everything all over again.
Unless that's what you want to do.
Unless, of course, that's what you want to do, is start all over. But other than that, you really don't want to use gesso. Now, there's different type of products you can use to seal. I prefer a matte spray. They have a glitter spray, a gloss spray, Mod Podge.
Right.
This is the spray sealer I use. I won't use that till the end. I also use Mod Podge. Not very often though. And then this sealer, I use it for watercolors. So let's continue painting the nose. And all those I showed you, you can get at Walmart in the craft aisle. There's the nose part. Now I'm getting ready to do the side. Now one side uses the aqua and the other side uses the green. But what I'm going to do on the scales, these right here, I'm going to paint them aqua. This and that, I'm going to paint them aqua color, just to make it more unique. Now on the right side, I'm going to paint it with the hooker green. Right side of the face of the dragon. Because now I'm going to work on the face. You want to make sure and fill in as much space as you can, because it will show through since it's all one color. I'm still painting with the hooker green. See, the one side is hooker green. Now I'm going to go down this area with the hooker green. But you always want to take your time and do one section at a time. And then by the time you're done with the one section, the other side is dry. And my hands tend to shake. So there's a lot of times I get out of the line. But I just go with the flow and try to correct a mistake. Now see, that one side, the neck is done. Now I'm going to do the other side of the face. That side I will use this color on, the bright aqua green. Now I'm going to do the bright aqua green on the other side. Still using the fine tip paintbrush. It's a small area, so you want to use the small tip pen or paintbrush. I'm still painting the other side of the face. I'm going over it one more time because there's some spaces. Now I'm using the Mars Black because I painted over one of the lines. So I'm going to use the Mars Black to touch it back up. You're always wanting to touch up the lines when you have it drawn first and then you paint it. You're always wanting to touch up the lines. Because sometimes paint gets over it and it doesn't look like it belongs. I'm doing touch-ups with the Mars Black on the painting. But yeah, every chance you get, you want to do touch-ups on your lines. Because when the paint dries, sometimes it dries lighter than you need it to, and then that outline is gone. Okay. Now if you look, both sides of the face are done. Now I'm going to work my way up to the eyes. That's where the fluorescent blue comes in. Because the outline of the eyes are blue, a really light blue. So you want to make sure you get as close to the color as possible. Again, I'm using the thin brush because of the tiny details. I'm still working on the touch-up around the eyes. And this is another thing you want to make sure you get in between the lines so you don't lose your guideline. And you want to use just the tip of the paintbrush to get in the small places. Because if you use the full brush, it'll smear. Okay. Now I'm going to work more around the eye. One eye is done. See, isn't that a pretty color? Now I'm going to work on the other side. And it looks like there's a little bit of some white on the other side. So I'm going to look for my white in my bag. Down my white. I am going to use titanium white. It's an artist loft. And you can get it at Michael's. I'm going to put it with the rest of the paint. Now I'm going to use the aqua again around the other eye. And then there's a touch of the fluorescent blue. But don't be afraid to make the painting your own. There's nothing the matter with making the painting your own. Okay, see? That's the other side. And here. Now, I don't claim to be an excellent artist. I'm far from it. But I am proud of what I do. Now, the next part I'm going to do is this top part right here around the cat's paws. I'm going to do that hunter green. Hooker green, I mean. That's the hooker green. Again, I'm using the thin brush because there's tiny areas that you can't use a round brush in. like I said, you want to make sure you dip your brush often in the paint. Because if you don't, it gets light. The paint color does. And you want to keep it as fluid as possible with the same amount of color. I'm dunking it in the water to clean it off. And then again, I'm back at the top area. And you want to kind of distinguish the cat's paw from the dragon. So you want to try not to get this on the cat's paw. Even though it is really tiny, you want to make sure you don't get it on the cat's paw. Because the cat's paw is white. And if you try to paint white over the green, it's not going to look right. I'm still painting the top of the dragon's head. And it really doesn't matter where you start. I just start on the main feature one, which is the dragon. It's always easier that way. But you don't have to start there. Now you also want to look at the picture for a guideline. So you make sure you're painting the color in the right spot. There's the rest of the head. Now the next thing is I'm going to do the horns of the dragon. Now I gotta be careful because the cat's tail is right here. And then there's a horn here and a horn here. So I gotta be careful not to mix the cat as a horn. And then I will go to the background area behind the cat. Now the horns on the dragon are like a gray with some white lines. So I'm just gonna paint it white because I don't have the exact color I need for that. Again, I gotta go dump the water because of the dark color, so please hang on, I will be right back. I'm back with clean water again. Now I'm going to work on painting the horns white. I'm going to use the same thin brush because the lines are very intricate. I got to clean my brush because there's some green on it still. Now the color I'm using is titanium white. And at first it won't show up because the canvas is white and it's white. But once you put the other colors in around it, it'll pop. And you gotta watch very carefully where you paint, because when you're using white, it's hard to tell where the canvas is and where you painted. Again, dip your brush as often as possible into the titanium white. Okay, I've got one horn done. I'll show you. There's one horn done. As you can see, some of the white got off and got under the black paint. So what I will do later is I will go over that with black, with the Mars black paint to bring out the lines again. But you want to wait till the white dries, because if you use the black and the white is still wet, it will turn a gray color. And since that's not the color that we need, you want to make sure the one side dries before you mix it with the, before you bring the black in. And a little bit of white goes a long way. That's the benefit of the white. You don't need to put a whole lot on the brush for it to work. Now I'm going to do the horn, the top horn on this side. See? Okay. Now the next thing we want to do while the white is drying is we want to do the cat. And see, if you look, the cat is white with black lines for his nails. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the cat, and then I will go back and touch up the lines on the one horn, and then we'll do work on painting the cat. Now with the cat, I need a small round brush, which is this. And again, I'm using titanium white. I'm still working on painting the cat. I'm painting the chest right now. I've already got one paw done. Now I'm working on the other paw. And now I'm going to do the lower part of the cat's face. As you can see, both paws are done. And again, I'm going to have to go over it with the Mars Black. But both paws are done. Now I'm getting ready to do this area, which is also white. See? I just painted under the mouth. Now I'm painting between the eyes. Now I'm painting the other side of the cat's face. Okay, now the white paint on the one horn should be dry. So I'm going to go over the lines that I painted over with the Mars Black. I'm still using the small round brush. And now the other horn should be dry, so I'm gonna go over it with the black Mars paint. There's not as many overlaps of the white as there was in the one horn. I'm going over some other areas that we kind of painted over. Okay, now I'm going to let the cap dry before I put the next color in. And I'm going to work on painting this area here, this back area, all the way around the dragon's head. That would be his fans. Or I think that's what they're called, I'm not sure. Now, this part is kind of a mixture between a really light blue and white, as you can see. There's even a little bit of some pink in there. So I'm going to pull out my pink paint. I'm going to use Rose Pink, Liquitex Basic Acrylic. I'm going to put that in my palette. I'm going to put that with the rest of the colors. And then there's an even lighter blue. Like this. Light blue violet. That I'm going to put up here too. I will still use the other colors, but right now I'm focusing on that part of the dragon, the outer. Okay, now for this brush, for the area down here, I have to go to a bigger brush. A large round brush. And I'm going to start with painting this area down here. And that's where the light blue violet's going to go. I'm going to paint it down here to the bottom. You want to do that every time because you don't want to leave it empty and it doesn't look as fluid if you just leave it like that. Do it all along the bottom part here. I'm going to do it all the way around the bottom since the color is very much consistent in that one area. down here, right here. Now I'm going to do this side. See? Okay. Now the next part I'm going to work on is these. And down here I'm going to put the fluorescent blue. Just in that one area. And the side has a little bit of some fluorescent blue on it. Then the rest of it is white. I'm going to use the titanium white. Be careful not to mix the white with the fluorescent blue, because that'll make the fluorescent blue lighter than what it needs to be. Okay. Now the next area I'm working on is here, and I'll show you. If you look, it's like the violet purple, the light blue violet. If you see, you can see where it's a lighter color. We're gonna do this. And notice I'm painting the sides the light blue violet. I'm making sure that the color is enough. And then I'm painting here. Now with this one, we have some white and the blue mixed together. So what you want to do on a separate area, you want to mix the colors. The fluorescent blue and the titanium white. Put just enough on it to change the color. And then you use a palette knife, like this, to mix it. And this is the ending color. It's the perfect color we need for it. We want to always make sure we dip the palette knife in the water to clean any excess paint off, so that when you use it again to mix, it doesn't mess it up. Now up in the top part of this, up here is the blue that is what I'm gonna, right up here is the blue that I just made that I'm gonna put. Rinse the blue off, and then the other part is white. And you use the titanium white. And then you want to get out your thin tip brush again. So since you're going to use this brush again, you want to put it on your palette. And then you want to get the thin tip brush again and go over some of the lines that you overlapped. If you can see, I kind of painted over some of the black. So I'm going to take care of that. But I'm going to be careful not to mix the black with the color. And I'm taking the advantage of touching up other areas. Like around the cat's mask. And a few other areas. Because they're dry by now. Still doing touch-ups. I'm doing some touch-ups still on the dragon around the area where some of the areas went and got really light. Okay. Still doing some touch-ups. Okay. And making sure the areas that got really light stick out so you can tell where your guide is. Okay. Almost done. Okay. See where I did all the touch-ups? They're darker. Now I'm getting ready to do the next area up here. And that is also the light blue and the white. And you want to leave the pointed tip one out in case you need to use it again. And now I'm back to using the large round. And I'm going to cover the next area. Which is right here. And see how I'm painting the sides? And I'm touching up in case the lighter areas on the side. Okay, the next one I'm going to use the light blue that I made. Okay, so now like I said, the next area we need to do is this other fan. And it has the blue that I made. And I'm using the big round brush. Still using a large round brush, I'm going to use the titanium white for the bottom half. I'm working on some touch up on some of the areas that we painted white. Okay, now I'm gonna wait for that to dry for a minute because I gotta go over the black. As you can see, I went over with the light blue with some of the black over the black. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let her dry, and then I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna fix that. So I gotta give it a minute. You always, before you put a dark color on a light color, you always want to make sure the light color is dried. Because if you don't, it mixes with the dark color and it doesn't look right. Now I'm going over the now that I've gone over that, I gotta let it dry. The next section I'm going to do is up here. And notice it goes from the purple to white. around the top. So I'm going to change it. I'm going to put a little bit more some white on my palette. And I'm going to use that. And then as we get further around the dragon, the colors get darker. So again, I'm using titanium white. I'm going to put more on my palette. Because I'm going to need to use it. Now what we're working on is, this is now turning into a lighter green. So what I'm going to do is mix the hooker green and the white to get that lighter green color. Getting out my palette knife again so I can mix the color. And I want to mix it really good. And you always want to make sure you mix the colors completely. You don't want any of the other colors sticking out, because then that means you didn't mix it correctly. Okay, so now we got the lighter green. Almost like a pea green. I'm going to put the palette knife here in case I need it again. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint this area white. Again, you want to do the side like this. And we'll make sure it's really good. And you want to do the top right here. Right here. And now you're ready to paint the red, or the pink, or the white, I mean, on the canvas where it needs to be. You want to make sure you get that worked in really good. the brush. Now you need the thin point brush because it's a small area that is the light green. Okay, so I'm gonna dunk it in the green, the light green, the one I call like a pea green. And I'm gonna work on painting that in around the edge. Okay. You want to make sure and get as much of that area as you can covered. You see the paint running down? That's what happens when the water and the paint are too loose. But it's an easy fix. You just take the color that was under it and paint over it. And make sure your brush doesn't make it runny like it was. As long as the paint is a darker color than the color that ran down to it. If it's not a darker color, it's pointless. Because the darker color will show through. Okay, so now I'm going to paint the white. And I'm going to use the round brush, this brush. And you want to make sure the white doesn't mix with the really light green. And you always want to hold the brush like this. You don't want to hold it down here because you have no control. And if you hold it up here, your fingers will cramp. So you want to hold it right here. It doesn't matter if you're using a short brush or a long brush. You always want to make sure you hold it just right, unless you plan it to be uncontrolled paint stroke. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is use the thin brush, the thin point brush, and I'm going to go over the lines I painted over with the black. And you don't always have to use the black to do the outline of a painting. It just makes it easier because it's the best color that shows up. So now we're getting towards the top of the painting, which is behind the cat. And that is going to be painted white, but you need to use the thin tipped brush because it's such a fine area. It's got all sorts of small crevices. Then once you get the small crevices taken care of, you can move up to the round brush. That's this brush. Now I'm gonna paint this right here, the white, because it's white all the way across. At least most of the way. So right here. And you want to make sure it's smooth. Because you want, when you paint on the top, you want to make sure the color blends. And you want to make sure that it doesn't overdo it. So now I'm using the titanium white. To paint the area above the cat. And down by the other horn. Now again, this area requires fine details, so you want to switch to the pointed paintbrush, the small brush. This brush. And you want to make sure you get the fine areas. Because those are the fine details that will stick out. Now if you look, this is where we're at. We're almost done with the painting. The top's painted. Now you see this area back here? That's part of the dragon. That is a combination of the hooker's green and the really light blue that I made. So that's the next area I'm going to work on. And again, I'm going to use this brush. And I'm going to paint the small areas that require it. And now I'm going to go to the hunter green, or the hooker green, I'm sorry. And paint the other areas that need to be painted. But in the small areas where the fine details are, you want to make sure you just use the tip of the brush. You don't want to use the whole brush. It'll ruin it. And the cat will be the last thing we do. That is what it looks like right now. Now I've got to paint this area right here. And that is going to be like the cream white color. Or more like white because I don't have cream. So again, I will use the thin brush to paint it. I will paint the top right here. The top. Okay, so now, like I said, the next area we're painting is up here. And that's going to be white as well. Okay, so now if you look, the colors are starting to get darker on this side because that's the rest of the body of the dragon. See, it's getting darker. Then as it gets down to the bottom, it's light again. And right now I'm going to go back and cover the lines that I painted over. Because we always want to make sure that you can see your guidelines. So right now what I'm doing is I'm going over the guidelines. Still going over some of the guidelines. Okay. So now we're going to start from the bottom on the other side. We're just going to start down here and work our way up. Okay, so now we got to do the light green. We're going to paint the side here, the light green. Because that's the color we're going to be using next. And we want to get all that covered. And the light green starts at the bottom. And works its way up to the middle. Now that the color on the side has changed, you want to change the color on the bottom here to the green. Okay, and you want to make sure it looks seamless. Okay, and now the next color going up is the bright aqua. This color, bright aqua. And again, you want to use the thin brush because of how tight the area is. Okay. The next color up is going to be the hooker green. That's this color. And that's going to go right here, all the way up to here and here. For that, you want to use the round brush. Because it's such a large area you got to cover. That's this brush. So we're going to paint right here. We're going to paint just the hooker green. And then right here is the hooker green. And we're going to go all the way up to up here. So we want to see that. Then we want to go up to here. Because as you go higher, or lower in this case, it gets darker. So you want to make sure it looks like that. So here, do touch-ups right here. Okay, and now we're ready to do the rest. As I said, we'll do the cat later. Right now we want to work on getting the dragon done, since he's the biggest character on there. And actually up towards the top, it's the lighter green again. Actually the aqua. So we're gonna want to paint this the aqua. Now if you look, you see the green, the hooker green isn't being covered very well. Because it's a darker color and this is a lighter color. Okay, now the outside of the picture is done. Now we got to do all of this. Now, everything else is done. around the outside, and we gotta do the cat. Now for the rest of it, you're going to want to use the thin pen to thin this paintbrush because of the details that you have to do. So let's start with the lighter green, and it's like it goes on the outside. And then in the middle is the titanium white. And then the next one up is more of a darker of the aqua color with the light green. The aqua goes all the way across the top on here. And then the lighter green goes under it. And then the next one is the lighter green across mostly at the top. And then we've got the lighter green. And then the next one up is all aqua green. And then the very tippy top of it is a white. By the bottom of the cat's tail. That is a white. Now if you look, our dragon is done. Now we just have to do the cat. And for that, I need to change out my palette, the colors, because it's more of a reddish brown color for the cat. So I will be right back. Now, as you can see, I've got clean water. And my palette is clean of all the colors I've used. What I used to clean it was a toothbrush to clean the barrels out and a little bit of some Dawn soap. Now our next colors we still need the pink. So I'll put the pink in. Hang on, I gotta dry it. That's one thing you gotta make sure you do after you put water in it. You wanna make sure you dry. Otherwise that water interferes with the thickness of the paint. Now we still need the pink, because as you can see, the cat ears are a really light pink. So we still need the pink. So I will keep that. We still need the Mars black in case I gotta touch up the lines. And this is the pink. It's a rose pink. Rose pink. And the Mars black. And the titanium white. That I need in case I gotta touch up around the white areas. And the rest of the paints I can put away. Now for the cat, I'm trying to find a good color. Okay, we've got burnt sienna, artist loft. That'll be a good color for the cat. What else? And that looks about what it'll do. Now the burnt sienna is going to go on the cat in certain areas. And then the titanium white will also go on. And a rose pink for the nose and the ears, the inside of the ears. So let's get started. Okay, so with the cat, you want to use this brush because it's tiny and you need the fine details. So I'm going to dunk the fine tip brush in the water. And what I'm going to start with is this part right here on the cat. And then I will also do the tail. So I'm doing the cat's mask, or the outside part of the mask. The burnt sienna is looking really good. It's a little bit darker than the color that is shown, but that's okay. That's how you make it your own. And of course I'm going to have to go back over some of the black lines. Almost done with the cat's face. And then the next thing I will be taking care of is the cat's tail. See, there's the cat's face, and you see there's some black lines I painted over. Now I'm going to do the cat's tail, which is right here. And it's a brown, and it's the burnt sienna and the white. So I'm doing the tip of the cat's tail. And every other line, every other space is the burnt sienna. Now I'm going to do the white. Cat's tail is done. Now, if you look, the head and the tail is done as a cat. Now I'm going to do the other fine details, the nose and the ears. The nose, as you can see, is a pink. So that's where I use the rose pink. Now there's a small area on one side that is the burnt sienna of the ear. And then there's the pink next to it. And the other side of the ear is white. Now I'm going to do the inside of the cat's ear. It's a really light pink. That's what it looks like so far. Of course, I gotta go back and go over the black lines. And then the other ear, the outside is a white. And inside of that ear is also a pink. Now I've just got to let the ears dry. So I got to give it a couple minutes. I'm waiting for the paint to dry, then I'm going to go back over it and touch up the areas with the black. Here's the cat. I'm still not done. I've got to go back and touch up the dark lines. And I got to put the hair from the inside of the ear on that is white. But once I'm done with that, the painting is done. And then I will take it outside. Spray it with my matte finish. After I sign it, of course. And then let it sit outside for 10 minutes. And then the painting is done and ready to go. But right now we're waiting. Okay. Now I'm going to go back. I'm going to go over the black lines with the Mars Black. And I'm not just touching up the lines I painted over. I'm touching up the lines that are really light. So right now I'm touching up all the lines. And so far it looks really good. So I should be able to do the lines on the cat in a couple minutes. I gotta let those lines dry before I go over the pink with the white. Meanwhile, I'm gonna paint on the bottom my name with the black and the thin point of J. C. G. T. And then next to it I put the year, which is 2020. That's a 0 right there. And when you're signing it, you don't want to sign your whole name. You just want to do like your initials, because it takes too much to sign your whole name. And now I gotta let that dry, and I see some areas I missed to touch up with the black. And the matte sealer doesn't change the paint. So the gloss does. But the matte finish does not. And I've always preferred the matte finish to the gloss. I'm still touching up areas that I see I missed. A little more areas I got to touch up. And I don't ever sign my work until I know it's completely completed. Now to make the white hairs in the ears, I gotta go to an even smaller tip brush. Because the lines are fine. This is the smaller one. Now let's do cat ear hairs. Okay. The painting is officially done. My name's on the bottom. Now the next step is to go outside, spray the matte spray. Now do not, I repeat, do not ever spray this inside. It has a very potent scent and you can get sick from it. That's for this one and this one and any other sprays you use. Do not use them inside, use them outside. If you give me a minute, I'm going to go spray my painting and then I will show you the completely. Here's what I did today. I need 10 minutes and it'll be able to be completely finished. So in the time that you're waiting for it to set, and what the sealer does is it seals the paint in so that it doesn't fade, drip, or run. So what you do while you're waiting for that 10 minutes is clean up your mess, clean up your station. And then when it's done, you show off the final product. Now if you give me a minute, give me 10 minutes and I will be right back. Here's the finished product. Now as you can see, the matte sealer spray does not change the paint color. And when you use it, you want to spray it all along these sides to seal the paint in. Now you know when your painting's dry, when you touch it and you don't stick. If your hand or your finger sticks and it's not dry yet. So here's my dragon and kitty cat. Finished. And here is the master. I want to say thank you for watching this video. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. And if you liked the video, feel free to comment or like. Thank you. Bye.